Hello and welcome to the Raptors Reaction Podcast. I'm your host, William Liu. I'm speaking to you after the Toronto Raptors defeated Argentinian side San Lorenzo de Almagro by a score of 122-105. It was a very sparsely attended game, both by the fans and by the significant members of the Toronto Raptors, as the Raptors, coming off the second out of a back-to-back, dealing with a couple of nagging injuries through preseason, decided to rest essentially every important player that they have. So guys like DeMar DeRozan, Corey Joseph, Kyle Lowry, Jared Sullinger, Jonas Valanciunas, Terrence Ross, DeMar Carroll, and Patrick Patterson all sat out. So that left the kiddies basically to go out there and perform in this glorified exhibition game that's being billed as a preseason game. And look, it was a very underwhelming game, all things considered. I don't think having a really tiny crowd didn't really help, especially since this is they played the game at the same time as the Jays were battling Cleveland in the first game of the ALCS. But yeah, I watched it. I wrote about it, and now I'm speaking about it. So this is what you missed if you were one of the Jays fans that was too busy watching baseball, which is totally understandable. So yeah, for anyone who's not familiar with this podcast, basically my goal is to deliver a short 10 to 15 minute post-game reaction podcast after every game, just to give you the nuts and bolts of what went down in tonight's action. And so let's start with handing out 3 stars for the game. The first star of the game for the Raptors has to go to Fred VanVleet, who was incredible. He had, in 38 minutes, he scored 31 points on 12 of 19 shooting, hit 2 threes, recorded 5 rebounds, and had 5 assists as well. Game high plus 25. It was a very impressive performance from VanVleet, which was very encouraging not only because he was obviously had a great game, but this is the first opportunity where he had to fully seize the reins on the offense and be the point guard and be the number one option on the floor, and he delivered. VanVleet is not necessarily what I would describe as a scorer, but certainly today he showed a lot of scoring prowess. He had a lot of drives to the basket, which were surprising because he is kind of he's a shorter dude, definitely not an explosive leaper, but kept the defense on their heels, shot 7 free throws, and finished a couple of nice layups in the lane, so that certainly weren't easy. He also drilled a couple of jumpers from the outside. It was a very nice performance for Fred VanVleet. Watching this game today, for the first time we can extend action out of VanVleet. I realized that he reminds me a lot of Raymond Felton, which is not necessarily the most flattering comparison. It's not a sexy pick to be compared to Raymond Felton, of all people, but he is similar in that sense, where he is a stockier guard, not very tall, not very explosive, not very quick, not an elite shooter, but is a very smart guy that is able to use his full complement of skills and parlay them into being an effective player. So what I mean is that, like, VanVleet is not a great shooter, but he definitely can shoot it enough. He's not a great driver, but he's quick enough to sometimes beat his man off screens and stuff, take advantage there, and he's not an explosive finisher, but he can scoop it in with either hand. When you look at the overall package of a guy like VanVleet, you're not necessarily that impressed. He kind of just looks like a ho-hum dude, but because he's such a smart player, he's a very intuitive sense of how to run an offense, when to look for his own shot, when to set up his teammates. All that put together makes for a pretty useful player. And yeah, in that respect, he's kind of like Raymond Felton, without the cupcakes. And so, great night for VanVleet. Very promising showing. Also a great night for Norman Powell, who gets the second star. He had 17 points in 24 minutes on 6-8 shooting. Made the only 3 that he tried. Had 4 assists and 3 steals. Norman Powell I mean, this kid is just not shy, man. I mean, you have pretty much every other rotation player resting, and although Powell is also a rotation player, he was still on the court because he's one of the younger dudes. He's coming into a sophomore year, but he definitely didn't look like a sophomore out there, especially in the first half. He really asserted himself on the game. When he asserts himself in the game with his driving, slashing style, I don't think the San Lorenzo defenders were totally prepared for it, especially how aggressively Norman Powell was going to the hoop, almost maniacally in a preseason game. But it's breathtaking because not only does Powell have a great low aggressive handle that he's able to keep his dribble low, protect the ball, and get to the basket and finish through contact, but he's also such an explosive leaper with such long arms with someone who's 6'4" that he's able to complete these dunks. That like today, for example, he threw down 3 dunks, and 2 of them stood out to me in particular. One, he drove down the lane, and there was a defender, shot blocker, waiting for him, and he rose up and threw it down over him with like kind of 2 hands. He kind of let go at one point with one hand, so like a one-handed dunk, but definitely a very impressive one. Where he sort of just like quickly, like he just jumped up so quickly and he was able to dunk over the guy. And another play where he was driving along baseline, going quite fast, and then all of a sudden throwing it in reverse for a reverse baseline jam. That was, again, quite surprising to the defender because this is 6'4" dude dribbling across the lane. Almost 99% of the time that guy's just driving all the way through, or at least going for a reverse layup, where you can sort of challenge a shot when the ball goes on the other side. But yeah, Powell is he was too good for this game. He really was too good for this game, and it showed. He played really well, and he got a lot of rest in the second half. So only 24 minutes, which makes sense. Like he's a more important player than some of the other guys in this game. And then in terms of the third star, there's a couple of candidates. Like a lot of Raptors played well. Jakob Poeltl had probably his most successful game of the preseason. He had 12 points, 6 rebounds. He finally got some defensive rebounds tonight, which is weird because coming into this game, 12 of Poeltl's 15 rebounds in preseason were on the offensive end. And tonight he got 2 more, but he also had 4 defensive rebounds. So I thought that was just a weird stat that he was carrying into this game. But yeah, Poeltl was decent coming off sort of pick and roll action and stuff, just like filling in, being in the dunker spot, just being in the right place at the right time and finishing around the hoop. He also had a nice 2-handed dunk at one point, which is good because I had been harping a little bit on Poeltl's sort of tendency to sometimes go for the softer layup finish instead of the dunk finish. And I don't know, man. Sometimes with how physical the NBA is, you got to dunk it more. And tonight he had a nice dunk in the first half. It was encouraging to see. But in terms of who was the third best player in this game, I guess Drew Crawford, who I really like his game. Just a nice two-way game. Nothing flashy on either end, but again, the guy like VanVleet, who is a smart player, knows what he's doing on defense, knows where to be on offense. Not great at driving to the hoop, but he had a couple driving layups today, and also was accurate from deep. Drilled all 3 of his threes. He finished the game with 17 points on 6 of 10 shooting, with 5 rebounds as well. So yeah, those three guys, and I guess a bonus one in Poeltl. It was a nice all-around performance from the team from the young guys on the team to secure a win against an Argentinian side, which they're no slouches. Like you got guys like, well, actually, you got guys like, it's not like I want to name anybody that you guys will recognize, but like San Lorenzo, they moved the ball really well. They have 28 assists, which is on 33 made baskets, which is incredible considering there are some like putbacks and stuff that you just can't record assists on. So have 28 assists on 33 field goals is incredible, and a lot of those were led to open threes and stuff. They shot 29 threes, they hit 15 of them for 52%. You could definitely see why they were the Argentinian champions. Like this is a very ruthlessly drilled team. I think the only thing, they're missing 2 things. One, they don't really have a guy that can break down his own man and then sort of get the defense scrambling, because once they actually get the defense scrambling, whether it's off an offensive rebound or off a drive that somehow gets into the lane and stuff, They do have great passers all throughout. The coaches, I'm not sure what his name was, but he drilled his players to move the ball, share the rock, and eventually swing the ball to find the open man. It's a very basic concept, but like a lot of teams, even in the NBA, don't do it. And they did it beautifully. And two, they could use a shot blocker but those are hard to find, and those are, especially the foreign athletic bigs, usually get drafted into the NBA, or at least they don't stick around in Argentina. But still, they look very impressive, and they definitely gave the Raptors a strong, stiff test in the first half. I think San Lorenzo led by 2 going into halftime, before the Raptors led mostly by Fred VanVleet, turned around in the third quarter and just completely seized control. So it's a good game all around, fun game. Moving on, I'm going to hand out the Gerald Henderson Award, which, for anyone who is unfamiliar, it's Gerald Henderson Award goes to a player that kills the Raptors that doesn't normally kill any other team. Kind of like how Gerald Henderson turns into Michael Jordan every time he plays the Raptors. And in this game, I thought 3 San Lorenzo players really stood out, but I got to give it to... I gotta look up his name. Gabriel Deck. Gabriel Deck was really impressive. 6'7", 21 years old, small forward type. A little bit of an outside in perimeter game. That he was very efficient tonight. 7 of 8. Just a smart player, good touch, good scoring touch. Ultimately, he didn't make much of an impact aside from scoring, but still, the scoring touch is nice and the size is nice. Maybe he gets a look from an NBA club eventually. So. Shout out to him. What else? Oh, I wanted to update on the rookies. So, yeah, Jakob Poeltl, he had a nice game. Nothing necessarily spectacular, but Poeltl isn't really a guy who goes for the spectacular. He's just, I would say the most impressive thing I've seen out of Poeltl so far in preseason is he just really does have a keen understanding of where the ball is going. Especially off drives and stuff, he follows up the drive really well to get putbacks and stuff, which he's consistently done in every game. I wish again he would consistently finish strong, but still he's I don't know, he's shooting like 60% in preseason, so it can't be that bad. As for the other rookie, Pascal Siakam got the start. Very impressive again, 8 of 10 shooting from the field. Just boundless energy. Wasn't great on the glass, and for a while Toronto, or at least in the first quarter, they did have a problem conceding offensive rebounds, which is disappointing considering Nogueira and Siakam are definitely 2 of the more athletic and bigger dudes on the court. But Siakam was very energetic, ran the lanes really well, hit an outside jumper at one point, clanked both his free throws, but the form looks good. Everything there should be fine. But yeah, just Siakam's energy is something that will definitely come in handy for the Raptors. And if he does eventually take that backup center bench role, he's definitely less talented than someone like Bebe, but Siakam's energy and it's like not just like regular energy. Like he's more energetic than the regular energy dude. Siakam's energy and the fact that he's been so mobile, especially covering on the perimeter, that gives KC like a certainty that you want on your bench players. You want some certainty, or you want like high variance awesomeness, like Lou Williams used to be, right? But yeah, Siakam is definitely the first type, which is what you're getting from him night to night, a lot of energy, and he showed it tonight. Very efficient, 8 of 10 from the field. One more thing, Bruno. I was going to update you on Bruno, but before I tell you about Bruno, let me tell you about our sponsor for the podcast. That's right, this podcast has a sponsor now, which is a sponsor that you guys should be pretty familiar with. Brian Goldfinger Personal Injury Law. They've extended their sponsorship from the Raptors Weekly podcast over to these reaction podcasts. I've talked to Brian. Brian is a huge Raptors fan. We got to get Brian on the podcast eventually, but he's got some stories to tell, including a very good one about Euro's slow car. Which if he's got a Euro slow car story, then he's a big Raptors fan. So shout out to Brian Goldfinger of Personal Injury Law. And finally, before we wrap up this very long podcast, which I really only want to talk for 5 minutes about, Bruno Caboclo had another impressive, encouraging outing. Actually, impressive is too much. Encouraging is the right word. In that he did functional basketball things. And I mean things like one of his 3 baskets on the night. He had 6 points, 3 of 6 shooting. One of his 3 baskets on the night was sort of a very routine basketball play where you have someone driving to the basket, and if they get committed so deep in the paint, you can either stand in the corner or you can cut to the basket, wait in the dunker spot, and then sort of capitalize on the dump-off pass. And he did that, cut to the basket, got the dump-off pass, made the layup. And that's the sort of intuitive play where you're just like, well, what's so special about that? That's just a regular basketball play. Any basketball player should know that. But for a guy like Bruno, you can't necessarily expect Bruno to always make the correct basketball play or even know what that is because he's so inexperienced. So to see him make one of these basketball reads and do it correctly and finish and everything like that, that's something to stand on. That is a bit of solid ground that is so hard to find with Bruno sometimes. Bruno also had a crossover at one point in the third quarter where he sort of shook his man going right to left, then pulled up from 20 feet. That was butter. That was a really nice move. And as always, he had the length is a problem. He had 1 steal, 1 block tonight in 20 minutes, which doesn't necessarily stand out. But one play that did stand out was at one point in the second quarter, I want to say, Bruno was sort of lost in the rotation shuffle. San Lorenzo, like I said, they moved the ball really well, especially against scrambling defenses, and they definitely found the open man for the 3. So Bruno had lost his man. Someone else had picked up Bruno's man, so Bruno's job was to read the rotation, find the next guy, find the open guy, and close out. And he was late on that. But because Bruno's so quick and so long, he was able to recover all the way across the lane. Across the court. And with his massive 7'9" wingspan, he was able to contest a shot and force an air ball out of an otherwise open shot. And that was impressive because that's the stuff that illustrates like the tantalizing potential that's there with Bruno. And again, like the fact that we're still talking about sort of these sort of minor things like making a basic basketball cut or like making a simple crossover move and things like that. They don't sound impressive on paper, but for a guy like Bruno where so much of it is unknown, every bit of this real tangible production is something to get excited about. At least it is for me. So yeah, it was an encouraging game from Bruno, and I think Bruno's strung together a couple good games now where he's at least done something effective. In the Denver game, he was good on defense, played strong defense against Danilo Gallinari. In the Clippers game, Bruno had a couple moments, a couple plays in that wild fourth quarter comeback that fell just short. So yeah, we're seeing real things from Bruno. Not that we expect to see them in the rotation or at the NBA level consistently, but still. We're seeing something out of Bruno, and that something is good. So, and with that, something is good. I sign off. I will be back to you after, when's the Raptors' next game? Detroit. They play Detroit next Wednesday. So I'll speak to you after the Detroit game. So thanks for listening. Goodbye.